Hello and welcome to the second episode of Let's Map with OSM. In the previous episode, we covered the entire AOI, identified some of the problems that we'll be facing, and just took a general view of the lay of the land. In this episode, we're going to dive right in and start mapping. So right now what I've done is I've added Bing as my preferred source of imagery and haven't done really much. But there's one change I'm going to make over here so that our life is a bit easier. I'm going to also choose this custom GeoSeduc layer. Now, GeoSeduc is essentially a database from the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which they have made available for the public to use. A subset of this data is available to the OSM community for usage. The kind folks at DataMeet have published this as a layer that we can use as a WMTS in our preferred GIS software. I have taken this directly and I've added this as an imagery layer as well. While I won't be using this directly to edit any of my features, I will be using it as reference, and you'll see why in a second. So if you see here, it has got names of villages for roads and some other relevant information which I can then use to enrich my map. It may not be the only source of data that I'll use, but it'll be one of the sources. So let's hide this and let's get started. So what I do when I start off with any given area is I start with the roads first. So there are two ways in which you can edit. You can either go by the direct editing mode. I can either press A on my keyboard or choose this tool on the edit toolbar and then start editing. So what this gives me is a point at each click, and each of these points is then connected by a way. Now this is a very fairly standard way of going about things and is okay until it's not, because it can get tiring at times, and you'll see immediately why. Is because see, if you're editing a straight road, that's still okay. It's not much of a problem. If you're editing a curve, then you need to start editing vertices for every single point on the curve, and it does get tedious, and it may not look like a very nice looking road in the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop with this tool right over here, and I'm going to switch to a plugin. This plugin, called as fast drawing mode, essentially allows us to drag our mouse cursors, and then it'll start placing nodes and ways along the way that we drag it. So I can either press this tool or I can press Shift F on my keyboard. So you can see the icon has changed. So once I start from this particular node and just drag my mouse, it'll start placing these vertices. Now I don't need to worry about the accuracy too much because it's automatically going to do some extrapolation or interpolation and make sure that the number of vertices are reduced, but it's also going to make my life much easier. So what I do is when it's for straight stretches, I just go back to my regular mode, and when it's time for curves, I press my mouse button down and let it add the vertices along the curve. There we go. So here you can see that sometimes what happens is that vertices get laid a bit outside what we can see in the imagery. That is what we can edit a bit later to make our roads a bit more smoother. So what I like to do is generally take it to its natural conclusion. So in this case, it's joining back to the same road. I'm going to leave it here and press enter on my keyboard. So you can see that it's nicely made the curves with the edges that I put. It's reduced the number of vertices to reduce complexity, but it has let me add the curve nonetheless. Now what this has done is essentially just added a bunch of nodes and ways connecting it, but we do need to classify it. The Indian highway tagging system that is suggested by the community suggests that all rural roads should be by default as unclassified. However, there are certain exceptions when it comes to higher tier roads. For example, this is a larger main road which is connecting a village to another village, so it can very easily be classified as a tertiary, and in terms of quality it's a bit better and wider as well than the internal village roads. But at the same time, let me create this loop. Now, since this is exactly one road and these are not two different roads that are connected to each other at this vertex, what I can do is I'll just combine these into one way, add a tag, and I'll call it highway tertiary. And that's it. So this road is now added. Now I don't know the exact name of the road. I can refer to GeoSadak and say it's VR10 Velas Baladewadi Road, but I am not going to name it as such at this moment. Maybe we'll revisit this name a bit later. So now that the main tertiary road has been added, let's add the internal village roads. So I'm going to press A on my keyboard, draw a line over here, center, press S so that I select this, click on the tags, and the previously used tags, they already come up over here, the past 5 used tags. So I'm just going to choose highway equal to unclassified. I'll say OK. Similarly, I'm going to add this. So now I'm going to choose my fast mapping mode because this road has a lot of curves. To be honest, this is where I would really appreciate some higher resolution imagery because I can't really make out where this road actually ends. I'm going to have added an unclassified road for the moment. We just adjust the road that we made a bit earlier so that it's aligned with the center point of the road. So whenever you're mapping roads, one thing to always keep in mind is always try to stick to the center line of the road, which should be approximately the center of where the road is, because in terms of accuracy, that's where the or accuracy and cleanliness, that's where the center of the road lies, and that's where your line should be. You don't want your line of the road coming at the edges, because in the case of urban areas, for example, you may have other things over there such as a footpath or maybe number of lanes and so on and so forth. So always try to keep your roads along the center line. So that's it for the main roads for this village. So over here I can see some other features such as this thing going over here. I may not want to map these because they just naturally created paths. They could be paths created by foot or because of vehicles such as tractors running. But some of them do end up in some other place. Otherwise they just start in the middle of nowhere and then in the middle of nowhere. And that's not really helpful for us or for any other software that will probably use this map. For example, if I'm using the map for a routing engine and you've got these roads that connect to nowhere, then it's not going to be helpful for anyone. So wherever I have an iota of a doubt, I do not map that feature. It's better to just keep it as is, and maybe somebody who has more on-ground knowledge can come and edit it. So what we can do in these cases is maybe just leave a note saying that, look, I don't know where this road leads, but if you know where this road leads, please do map it. So for this particular village, I don't see any other major roads. Maybe this one. Yeah, this seems like a track, right? So can you see this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another road over here, and I'm going to call it track. So again, this is very loosely defined, but seems to be quite accurate. Press enter. I'll just move the vertex a bit. I'm going to do the same thing over here. It's fun mapping Indian villages because the roads are almost never straight. They grow so organically, and then around these roads are your houses, or sometimes the houses will come first and then your roads. It's a lot of fun. So I'm not going to call this road as such, or it's not. It's just a track, probably something that is used by some off-road vehicles, just tractors, and it's just found. You can see there's a potential road over here, but again, it's quite difficult to map. Alright, so for this particular village, we've added the road. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and upload my changes. Say ignore the warnings, continue upload, and I'm going to call it added missing roads. There you go. Now let's map the buildings. Now when it comes to buildings, you can always go the normal way. I'll go clockwise. I'll draw along the edges of the roof. I'll join this. I'll select this and call it a building. So I'll say building. Go to yes. Alright. But a few things over here is that you always want to make sure that the edges are at an angle of 90 degrees, because that's how a rectangle is. So I can just press Q on my keyboard and it's going to adjust it properly. Now imagine doing this for all of the buildings over here. It's going to be mighty painful. So what we're going to do instead is that we're going to use a plugin to draw buildings. So all I need to do is either press a draw buildings tool over here, or press B on my keyboard. And there you go. So there you go. Then you can just add buildings quite quickly. So what I try to do is that I try to map the more rectangular buildings quite quickly and then go to the more irregular shaped ones. A decision that you will have to make when you're mapping Indian buildings such as these. For example, these two buildings they touch each other. The roofs touch each other. So you can or cannot do this, in the sense that if you want to join the buildings together, you can. If you don't want to do it, just leave a gap. So because these look identical to each other, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press Ctrl C and Ctrl V. And there you go. I'm going to put them as close as possible to each other because they're almost joining. I'm not sure whether on the ground whether they join or not, so I'm just going to leave it at that. One good piece of advice is also to make sure that you keep your zoom level up to a specific zoomed out state, because you don't want to just get in and map things that aren't a building, because the closer you get, the more pixelated it tends to be. And frankly, what I've learned is when it comes to rural buildings or buildings in general, it's okay if your building shapes don't really match exactly what you see on the ground, because what you're essentially putting over here when you're just breaking the ground is you're adding something to the database that wasn't there before. The way OSM works is that the community corrects itself. So there'll be mappers who might come along and who are heavily interested in making sure that the buildings are exactly mapped the way they are. So someone might come along and improve upon the edits that you have made, and that's fine. So that doesn't mean that you can map buildings any way that you want, but at the same time, it's okay to not be completely accurate and be slightly representative, because the imagery that you've got to work with isn't really the best. So that's fine. Any building that wasn't there before and it's now been added, it's still a plus. So any of these buildings which I feel are a doubt, where I don't understand, for example, I can't figure out if this particular thing is an entire building, or this is one, and it's just one building under each roof. Those are the kinds of buildings that I'll just leave. It's okay to not map, to reiterate my previous point. If you feel doubtful about something, don't map it. It's okay, right? Your point or your aim over here is to enrich the map as much as you can. You are not responsible for making sure that every single thing that you see has to be mapped in some way or the other. If you feel doubtful, leave it. You can probably revisit this later if you found some alternate source of imagery or some street view imagery such as mapillary traces or something along those lines, which can help you map the buildings better. So this, I feel, is a building and there's some sort of a shed. So the choice you have to make over here is whether you want to map this completely as a building or you want to leave some of the area as a shed. I'm going to do that. When it comes to a shed, there's some things you can do, like adding just a roof, which is more advanced editing. I don't want to do that right now. My aim for this particular change set is just to add the basic buildings as much as possible. When we're doing our final rounds, when we want to refine our buildings a bit, we'll come back to it. Same goes here. So it could be a veranda of sorts. Now this is where your experience and your observation really comes into play, because if I was a stranger and I was looking at these for the first time in my life, I had no idea what they looked like ever, I may not be the right person to map this area because I don't really know what the buildings really look like. I don't have the capability to make these decisions. But because I've been around buildings like these before, I know what they could potentially be like, right? So, which is why I can make certain decisions. So over time, you can make certain decisions based on this, or even by looking at images of a similar nature, and then you'll be able to improve upon your decision-making process. Okay, so let's map some of the more complex structures here, such as this L-shaped building here. Hopefully somewhere down the line we'll find some taller buildings. This mapping them is fun in itself, but I'm not too positive that I will find taller buildings in rural areas. Find them in urban areas. But the trick over there for taller buildings is to make sure that you map at the base of the building, so the footprint of the building rather than the roof of the buildings. Sometimes what you can do is, if the footprint is not readily visible or the building is too tall, you can then map along the roof and then drag your outline to the base of the building or the footprint of the building to make sure that it matches. Alright, so I think let's just switch to a different imagery source. See if you can make it better. Yes, I agree. Oh, there's no SG clarity in this particular area. Let's see if there's normal SG image or even Mapbox. Maybe let's consult Mapbox. Yikes, Mapbox and Magebox. Maybe something on GeoSadak. GeoSadak is okay, but I still can't figure this out exactly. What else do I have? Let's try Esri. No. Even for normal Esri. Okay, this is a bit better. So I know now that there's a building here. So I think what this is a combined structure in itself. So let's do that. Let's map that. I see that this is one building, this is one building. Okay. So what we'll do is zoom in. So if you're a diligent mapper and you feel I've made any mistakes while mapping any of these buildings, feel free to go to these change sets. I'm Cartify on OpenStreetMap, and you can edit these. Now there must be a lot of difference the time when the Esri and the Bing images are taken, because I see a drastic difference over here. But what I can make out is that there's one building over here and there's another over here. So let me add that quickly. Alright, I'm going to trust Esri on this one. Alright. So those are the buildings added. Okay, let me upload this change set. I'll see added buildings. Now, often it's recommended, and even I do recommend keeping your change set small. But in this case, because the entire village was completely unmapped, I feel it's okay to just add all of the buildings in one change set. But it's up to you. But I would avoid having too many objects in one chain set at all times. So over here, I can see that there's a. Let me switch back. No, I don't want to move the whole road. There's a road coming over here. Let me just map that. Over here, sometimes when you've got a lot of precision tracing to do, it's okay to not use the fast mapping tool, fast auto. That's okay. It just makes your life easier when it comes to long stretches of roads which have curves. So let's say highway classified. I can see that this road actually extends a bit further. So any other roads that we missed? Let's see that this road provides access to these houses. Right. So we'll just add this as a cheat set as well. It's fine. I don't know what the name of this highway is yet, so I'm just going to ignore this. Delete this warning. Alright. So along the side of the village now I can see that there are certain interesting features. Like there's farmlands, all of these farms in between. You'd call this a ring road. There's some farmlands over here. Some large farmlands over here. These are farmlands as well, though they do look like orchards. There could be a couple of flowering or fruiting trees in between here, but we're going to classify them as a farmland because this is likely to be farmed land for wheat or some, not wheat, but I'm not sure what vegetables I'll be using, but you can see that this is all man-made and it is used for farming. So what I'm going to do is I am going to switch to my fast tool. I'm going to rough. It's okay if you miss certain things, you can always edit what you made to the final feature. You can see there's some buildings I missed. Okay. Now I'll just use A to finally finish the loop. And I feel that this should have been farmed out as well. So just make it as such. Call land use. They've got larger farmlands on this side of town, so let's we'll take it for a different session, or I'll probably do that offline. Let's go land use farmland. Got some adjacent farmland here as well. I find these odd shapes a lot of fun. Go. All right. So we have a lot of farmlands in these areas, so we can all map all of these. Now the thing is, you can see over here that next to the farmlands you have these bushy areas dotted by grasslands. We can call this essentially as scrubland, while the more densely tree populated areas can be called as a wood. So for example, this could probably be shrub and this could be a wood. Well, these are farmlands and these are fallow land essentially. They could be used for farming, but doesn't look like they have been used for farming very actively. The way we know that this was used for farming is probably because of the blackened areas, which were probably some grasses that were burnt off by the villagers at some point to encourage new growth. Alright, so that's, I think, a good point for us to stop in today's episode. Let's just upload our farmlands. And we'll continue in the next episode. Just a humble request for all of you viewers is, if you'd be so kind, please do subscribe to the channel. There'll be a lot of new videos that will be coming in the near future apart from the Let's Map series. I plan to expand a lot, talk to a lot of people, maybe some tutorials here and there, just have some conversations about the state of the industry. So please do subscribe, please do share the channel with your friends. I know it's a fairly new channel, there's just a couple of videos that will be up now, but we'll be growing very soon. Thanks a lot and see you in the next episode.